Should you accept your tenants paying you in cash, money orders, checks, online payment apps, or property management software? That's the question we're going to try to answer today. Now, there's no perfect solution. Let's start with that. Even if there was a perfect solution, let's say you thought that the perfect solution was that you're going to only accept payments online. Well, if a tenant is not comfortable doing that and they want to pay you with a check, for example, here in New York, you're obligated to take that check. And this is true for a lot of other states. So you have to check the laws in your locality. Let's start by talking about some of the traditional payment methods, like, for example, cash. Now, cash has problems. If you go to the tenant to pick up the cash, that's one option. Or the tenant has to come and drop off the cash where you are. How are they going to put the cash in an envelope and mail it to you? Would you be comfortable with that? I wouldn't be comfortable with that. Like, for example, we had a landlord who had over 200 tenants that we managed. So if you went, and let's say 30 of them pay with cash, if you went to pick up at the end of the month, and you were actually successful at picking up all the cash in one shot, which you'll never be, because if you go in the afternoon, they're all at work. If you go in the evening, they might be out doing something, so you'd have to go multiple times to pick up the money. And then you'd have to go to the bank to make a deposit. Now, when you're doing this on a regular basis, the people in the building know who you are. And after a while, even the people in the neighborhood know who you are. You're becoming a target for a robbery. Here's another story. A couple of years ago, I managed a commercial building. And there was a nail salon there, and the lady that owned the nail salon, she wanted to be paid in cash. So I would call her, I would text her, I would email her at the end of each month and try to collect the rent. When I finally got through to her and she was ready to pay the cash, I went over to her store, and she would stand behind a counter. And underneath the cash register was a drawer. She'd bend down, she'd open up the drawer, and take out the cash and put it on the counter and start to count the cash. And in the meantime, all the customers are right there in the store watching. So then I would take the cash in a back room and count it again, just to make sure that it's the right amount. Then I would put it in a bag and go to the bank to deposit it right away. But again, customers know, that people in the neighborhood know after a while, especially in this was a very high crime area that the nail salon was in. And after a while, people catch on to you and the risk becomes greater and greater. So if somebody doesn't have a bank account and they can't pay you in a check, what do? What about a money order? Well, money orders have problems as well. If people pay you with a money order, that can end up in the wrong hands. If it does, you'd have to go back to the vendor that sold you the money order and ask them to replace it, which is not an easy thing to do if that's even possible. And then there are checks. Checks have problems as well. Checks can get lost in the mail. Checks bounce. It happens. And, for example, we had a tenant who had a disability. She had a hard time taking her check and putting it in an envelope and walking over to the mailbox and putting the envelope in the mailbox, sending it off. Also, if you have many tenants that you're collecting checks from, let's say you have 200-300 tenants that you're collecting checks from or more. Some organizations have thousands of tenants that they're collecting checks from. Every time the checks come in, you have to go to the bank and make a deposit. That's very time consuming. Although nowadays, you can use your phone to deposit the checks, or you can use your PC. That makes it a lot easier. We are used to checks. We've always used them, and it works. Many landlords are not comfortable with doing anything online, and they absolutely insist on checks. And there's really nothing wrong with that. Now let's talk about online apps. And I would put these into two categories. Mobile payment apps, which are applications like Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal, or property management applications, and these are applications like Appfolio, Yardi, Billiam. So when considering these kinds of solutions, what we pay attention to are things like, for example, when we send out invoices to the tenants every month, letting them know what they owe, this can get pretty complex. So for example, let's say you have a tenant who's in arrears a couple of months. We have to create an invoice that shows the running total of what they owe. Or if they have been in arrears for a couple of months and then they give you a lump sum payment and they're trying to catch up, this can make the invoice more complex. Or if they're leaving and they want to use a security deposit as the last month of rent, what do you do then? Or if they have a lease renewal, they have to pay more in the coming month, or they have to pay additional security deposit. Or if they pay certain types of utilities, or they have repairs in their apartment. Now, all these things create an extra layer of complexity. You have to find out, can a mobile payment app handle this kind of complexity? For us, we're not comfortable with it. But that's one of the things that you'd have to really research. I mean, your apartments might be easier to manage and to send an invoice to. Maybe you don't have the kind of programs that we have, or the kind of the scale in the amount of tenants that we have. Another thing, for example, to consider is, what if the tenant overpays or underpays? We had a story a couple of years ago. We had a tenant who claimed that she had an agreement with the landlord that she was going to renovate her kitchen and she was going to be able to make partial payments or get a reimbursement for the renovations. So she spent a lot of money on a backsplash, new cabinets, new appliances, tiles, everything. And we asked her for a contract, for her agreement, and she really didn't have a legitimate contract. And we asked the landlord. He claims that he never agreed on to anything like this. And we looked in her records. So she was paying her rent with checks. So when we got the check, if it was a partial payment, we had recourse. We could just not deposit the check. We could discuss it with her further. But if she had been paying with a mobile payment app and the payment went through, what would we do? What recourse would we have? We'd have to call back the mobile payment app company. We'd have to call customer service, and we'd have to discuss it with them and hope that they could reverse the charges. Would they be on your side? Are they really specialized in real estate? I don't think they would really understand the legalities. Whose side would they be on? Would they be on your side? So these are very important things that you have to consider and that you have to research if you're going to use a mobile payment app. Now, we don't use mobile payment apps to have tenants pay us, but there are landlords who are comfortable with this and it works for them. At this point, I want to mention something that is both free and could be very helpful to you: our Facebook group. Our Facebook group is a group for New York City property owners and property managers. If you're looking for a place where you can communicate with other property owners and property managers about what kind of rent payment methods they accept from their tenants, why not join our Facebook group? I'll provide the link for our Facebook group in the video description below. Now, let's continue talking about online rent payment methods. What about property management applications? For a lot of these property management applications, collecting rent is actually a very small part of what they do. And for a lot of them, the way that it works is that you have to pay for a minimum subscription, a minimum amount of units every month that you're using. And this can get very expensive. There's an upfront investment in using these applications, both in time and in money. Money because of these minimum subscriptions, but also time because there's a huge learning curve in learning how to use the application, training your staff in using the application, and also bringing in the data to the application. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages for using these property management applications. In our particular case, we have a lot of affordable housing in our portfolio. So there are a lot of programs that are very particular to New York City. And these programs are very hard to customize in these applications. So we really struggled with that. But there are so many of these applications out there that are so vastly different in price and capabilities. So if you get it wrong, you could really waste a lot of time and money. But if you get it right, you will definitely be able to run your operation a lot more efficiently. We've only scratched the surface of rent payment methods, but I hope I've given you an insight that will help you make it easier for you to make a decision for your particular situation. Just one thing I want to mention before you go. We provide property management services. Our company, Premises Guardian, is located in New York City. We can help you manage your buildings with maximum profitability, less violations, and more satisfied tenants. If you're interested in learning more about us, please click on the link in the video description below. That will take you to a page on our website where you can schedule a call with one of our team members and learn more about our services. And you can tell us more about your business to see if we're a good fit and to see if we can take the pressure off you and remove some of your headaches, which is what we aim to do and have done for many of our clients. In the meantime, good luck managing your properties, and I hope this video was helpful to you.